Hi, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the Enhancers Awareness Program. In the first video in this section, I talked about the fact that the whole concept of the Enhancers Awareness Program, as the name states, is about enhancing awareness, and that the rationale for the focus of our program being about that is that the more aware you become, the more mindful you can be. And of course, the more mindful you can be means that you have a greater capacity to develop inner peace and inner stillness. And the result of maintaining those two things is healing and well-being. And of course, that's my vision, is to be able to bring a greater sense of inner peace and inner stillness and healing globally, one person at a time. So in the previous video, I talked about the whole idea that we have you look at who you are physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually, and how the mindfulness is recognizing that you have a choice between your habitual and programmed ways versus being aware of new strategies and ways of being able to live life that result in this inner peace. The unique part of the Enhancers Awareness Program that isn't addressed, certainly in the way that it's addressed in EAP, is the fact that in addition to having you become aware of those four elements, we also have you become aware of a personal narrative that sits at the foundation of nearly every choice that you make and becomes the filter that you have for life. So there's a lot of research that suggests that by the time we reach the age of 7, we've established most of the filters that we're going to be using for the rest of our life. And that these filters come off the back of our family programming, the culture and society in which we're raised, and obviously as a result of our personal experiences. And so what happens is that particular narrative, or what we call in EAP, that story, then becomes the basis of how you engage life physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually. And we go so far as to claim that it's responsible for the disease, the dis-ease and the disease that we experience. So the burnout, the exhaustion, the divorces, depression, the list goes on in terms of lifestyle diseases and situations that people find themselves in that wear them down. And of course, what we're beginning to see that result in people making the choice either to numb themselves through life through medication or to opt out of life through suicide. So what we do is have people become aware of this narrative. We've got a really lovely, gentle process where we get you through looking at repeated patterns of behaviour through life that point to a filter that was established in the very early stages of your formative years. And of course, sometimes people can't remember what those things were, but what we know is that people use that pattern as the basis for how they continue to experience life. So we look for that pattern through life, and we're able to identify the narrative without having to identify the actual experience or thing that happened that resulted in that narrative being formed. Now, in my particular case, my narrative was about my need to be noticed, particularly about needing to be noticed to be intelligent or smart. And this came off the back of siblings that were older than me that set a precedent for being much more intelligent than what I was, which led to expectations that I'd be the same, and failing to live up to people's expectations became a disappointment. I very easily and very quickly worked out that there are other ways that I could establish popularity or acceptance by people, and it became through my gift of healing and my ability to heal people, and through public speaking and the fact that I can inspire. So if I couldn't seem to be intelligent, which is what my story was, then I certainly was able to move forward in the world in a way that allowed me to be recognised because of my ability to heal and my ability to inspire. Now, the only problem with that is that the story keeps on running in the background, and the belief around the fact that I'm still not good enough or acceptable around that story means that it doesn't matter how much healing I do and how much public speaking I do, I'm still going to not be fulfilled in terms of my perceived sense of worth, given what was going on in my story. So what happens is we push the envelope in terms of trying to reach higher and harder the goals that are associated with acceptance around those new skills that I developed as a healer and as a speaker. The only problem with that is it doesn't matter how many accolades I get in those areas, it's never going to satisfy the original story, that original narrative there. And so in my particular situation, as I continue to push the envelope around needing to be recognised professionally and in public speaking, it meant that I spent less time with my family, and I became the absent husband and father, and of course the long-term result of that was divorce. The other thing that happens is that you end up investing a lot of energy, and part of that energy is finances, and disproportionately so, into being able to create situations for you to be able to excel in these areas. And of course, once again, because I was pushing the envelope around this, I ended up being in a situation of going through bankruptcy. When I was unable to maintain that sense of feeling good about myself because the story that sat behind it was never going to be fulfilled, in the empty spaces I would fill it up with doing community work, and when I couldn't be satisfied in community service, I resorted to food, comfort eating. So what ended up happening was I spent even less time at home because of the community work, and I ended up being over 140 kg in weight. All of these things coming off the back of this hidden story that I was unaware of, until such time as I became aware of the story and the way in which I was living my life in an attempt to fulfill that. Now, the beautiful thing about EAP is we help you to identify that story, but more than that, we do something else. We have a saying in EAP that says our story is the gift that we give ourselves in order to fulfill our highest purpose. So once I became aware of the story and I was able to reframe it, in other words, find the gift within it, and to be able to see it in a completely different light, all of a sudden I was able to use the gifts that I had developed in a way that was first of all loving to me. So I was able to place boundaries around it in terms of not exhausting myself or using it in a way that was going to cause me emotional and financial distress. I was also able to, in becoming clear of the story in that way, find a way that I could be more purposeful in terms of how could I be more loving to the planet, and how could I be more loving to the people around me. And so as these things became foundational to how I started to approach my life, all of a sudden I found that I was living life with a greater sense of inner peace, that I certainly had a lot more stillness in my countenance, but stillness that was inner stillness. And the other thing that happened was an increase in my health and well-being. Lost a lot of weight and became generally a much healthier human being. The Enhancers Awareness program is a very unique program, because what it means is that when I'm working with people who have done years and years of personal growth and development work, in nearly every situation they're not aware of that narrative and that story, and they certainly, if they are aware of it, haven't had to resort to going in and healing the wounded child, because it's not about having to fix anything up. It's about being aware of it in a new context, and that is to see the gifts that it's given and to be grateful for it. And it's that gratitude that allows forgiveness to take place about it and allows us to move forward. I'd like to encourage you to find out more about this wonderful program and how you can be a part of my vision of helping to create global inner peace and stillness and healing, one person at a time. Thank you for taking time to listen to my video.